What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode 202 of Goat Talk with Marcus, powered by Podex, fueled by Go Fuel. Joining me on the show once again, for the first time live, actually, is Emmitt Sevores of the C Team Pod. What's up, man? How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing fantastic. Week one kind of kicked me in a place where it hurt pretty bad. I know we're going to get into that a little bit, but I'm happy to be back on. It's been a while. I think the last time we were talking Packers, I know we're going to talk some Packers today. But hey, man, I'm happy to be back on.
It's always a pleasure to have you on. It might not be the smartest decision to have two Packers fans on this follow and the Packers misfortune from Sunday, but we'll figure it out. Before we get into the Packers and just what an absolute embarrassment of a football game that was on Sunday, let's talk about the two teams that played in the Super Bowl last season, and the Los Angeles Rams and the Cincinnati Bengals both lost this week. It's the first time since 1999 that the two teams that made it to the Super Bowl the previous year lost in opening week. In 1999, the Broncos and the Falcons both lost their week one matchups in the new season. Is there need to be concerned for either team? I mean, obviously, we saw the Bills absolutely spank the Rams 31-10. The Bengals, especially Joe Burrow, played the worst game of his life, threw 4 picks, fumbled the ball to make it 5 turnovers altogether. Somehow, though, the Bengals still kind of had a chance potentially to win that game. Which team are you more concerned about, if either, the Rams or the Bengals?
I'm really concerned about the Rams. I'll start off talking about the Bengals a little bit. They'll be fine. An injury to T. Higgins, a concussion, that hurt him big time. It's going to take a little bit for that offensive line to finally gel right. You're bringing in, I think it was either 3 or 4 new starters on that offensive line. It's not going to be perfect game one. It's not. It looked just as bad as it did last year, but it's going to take a little bit of time. Only like in game time, I think, really builds that. I think that practice is fine and all, but until you're going up against a defense who's not giving you the perfect look, it's going to take a little bit of time. You touched on Burrow playing probably the worst game of his career. He might not have a game this bad for the rest of his life. And then same with Evan McPherson. He's only missed 2 kicks in one other game, and that was the Green Bay game last year, if you remember that disaster of a game for our kicker and theirs. But I mean, like, literally throughout his entire career, which is last year and this year, he's only missed 2 extra points, and he only has missed 5 field goals all last year. So I think he'll be fine. When you talk about the Rams, though, they're in some serious trouble. They have a lot of stuff that's not going to be able to get solved, really. I mean, obviously, their offensive line, I'll touch on that in a second. Allen Robinson looked exactly the way that he has looked in Chicago, which is very ineffective. He's not putting in a whole lot of effort. Yeah, he could have gotten more than 2 targets, but I mean, I saw a video kind of showing all of the routes that he was out there running, and they didn't do much of anything special with him. It looked just like a classic Allen Robinson game. Matthew Stafford's elbow injury scares me a little bit, but I mean, I don't think we saw much evidence of that in the first game. But going back to their offensive line, their O-line depth chart's pretty scary. Not in a good way. They have Joe Noteboom, who was pretty bad. Right, he was getting bullied by Von Miller pretty much the entire game. You go David Edwards, who's at left guard. Brian Allen, who was their starting center, he's going to be out for a little bit. So their backup center on their depth chart per ESPN is Coleman Shelton, who's actually their starting right guard. So they're probably going to have to bring in Tremaine Ankrum Jr. To fill in his spot. And then they have Rob Havenstein, who's an NFL veteran on the right tackle. That is a bad NFL offensive line. That is really, really bad. Their best case scenario is bringing in a 40-year-old, or is waiting for 40-year-old Andrew Whitworth to come out of retirement to come play for him. It is not good for the Rams right now. Again, they have all this top tier talent, right? Jalen Ramsey, Aaron Donald, Cooper Kupp, Matthew Stafford. They had Odell Beckham Jr. They went out and they signed Allen Robinson. But this is the problem with that. They have no depth. The problem with the F them picks process is that you don't have depth. That's the problem with it. They have probably the top heaviest roster in the entire NFL. And you're starting to see why maybe having a top heavy team isn't great past a year or two. It's really starting to hurt them.
The Rams, the Rams. The Rams looked terrible. Week one, they looked terrible offensively. They looked terrible defensively. They looked like just terrible. The Bengals on the other hand, looked bad. But a lot of that had to do with Joe Burrow just getting off to an extremely slow start. This is a team in Joe Burrow and the Bengals that, despite the 5 turnovers, was still in a position at the end of that game to win the game if it weren't for Minkah Fitzpatrick blocking the extra point. Like, we're talking about the Bengals, despite 5 total turnovers from Joe Burrow, walking out of Cincinnati with a win opening week. The Rams are absolutely the more concerning team, I think, because when you look at what's happening across the NFC and look what's happening across the AFC, there isn't much parity in the NFC. There's a lot of parity in the AFC. And despite this one game, the Bengals are still among the best of the best in the AFC. They're still up there with the Bills and the Chargers and the Chiefs as being one of the more elite teams in the conference. The Rams, if they continue to look like this, could potentially not win their division that has the Cardinals, that has the Niners, and has the Seahawks, a division that we all think and all expect to be the Rams' division to lose, right? So from a totality standpoint, right, we're talking about a team in the Rams that, as you mentioned, lost Andrew Whitworth off the offensive line. Offensive line is terrible week 1. Lost Von Miller to the Buffalo Bills in free agency. Doesn't have OBJ, and well, I guess most people just kind of assume that whenever OBJ comes back from his ACL injury, he'll sign with the Rams. Is that really a given that OBJ is just going to automatically return to the Rams once he's all healthy and ready to play football? We don't know that for sure.
Especially if they're looking this bad. He wants to go to a contender.
He wants to win championships. And at this point in his career, I don't blame him, right? Look, we say that there's nothing wrong with Matt Stafford's elbow. Do we know for sure that there's nothing wrong with Matt Stafford's elbow? We don't, because one wrong hit, one wrong fall, one wrong move, and Matt Stafford's elbow could be terribly ruined. And I don't wish that on Matt Stafford. I think he's a great quarterback. But the Los Angeles Rams, I think we look at it from a totality standpoint, and we look at it as far as where the Rams rank in the NFC, right? We still kind of expect the Rams to be one of the best teams in the NFC because they are the Super Bowl champions, because they're in a relatively weak division. Relatively. It's not really weak, but it is relatively weak. Clearly heavyweights of the division. Now, if the Rams are struggling to continue to produce offense, and they're getting slaughtered like this defensively, that makes them susceptible to a loss against the Bucs, susceptible to a loss against the Saints, susceptible to a loss against the Cowboys, even though they don't have Dak, and we'll get into that a little bit later. Even susceptible to a loss against a team like the Eagles or a team like the 49ers. Like, there are a lot of solid defenses in the NFC that could wreak havoc on Los Angeles's, on the Rams' offensive line, and that is a concern that has to be fixed. The same way I think that the Bucs shouldn't be viewed as Super Bowl contenders, despite Tom Brady being the quarterback, because of the offensive line. I now feel that same way about the Rams. I still think the Rams can contend because overall they are better offensively and defensively as far as weapons are concerned, as far as the defense is concerned. But if the offensive line can't keep Matt Stafford upright, it doesn't matter who the receivers are, doesn't matter who the running backs are, because he's not upright. So it doesn't matter. So I agree with you. I'm absolutely more concerned about the Rams than I am the Bengals. I think the Bengals, their issue was just a really, really, really bad game from Joe Burrow that we're likely never going to see again. The Rams have a schematics and a personnel issue that I don't know if you can just fix after 1 week.
No, I agree. You can fix chemistry. I truly think that as the Bengals get more time with the offensive line, they'll gel. And did we probably jump on the Joe Burrow being a top 5 quarterback hype train a little early? Probably. That being said, he's not going to have another 4 interception, probably 5 interception, if not for a pass interference call. We're looking at that. That is the worst game he will play in his professional, college, peewee, any sort of career. He could live to be 60, and he's not going to throw 4 picks to his kids in the backyard in a wheelchair. Yep. He's not going to do that.
Yeah. Let's move on from the Bengals and the Rams. Let's talk about the Lions, who lost to the Eagles 38-35 in a game that, as we, I guess, all kind of expected, kind of came down to the wire a bit. They were down 10 with like a little over 10 minutes to go, or like a little over 5 or so minutes to go in the fourth quarter, and then they scored another touchdown, and they were right there. Obviously, a loss is a loss, right? And we don't believe in more victories in sports. But so forgive the oxymoron here, but is this a moral victory for the Detroit Lions to nearly beat a team in the Philadelphia Eagles that a lot of people expect to make a deep playoff run, and more importantly, put up 35 points against a defense that has James Bradbury and has Jordan Davis and has Fletcher Cox, who he did go out for a little bit because of injury, and has newly added C.J. Gardner-Johnson? This has to be some form of moral victory for the Lions, even though we don't believe in moral victories in sports, right?
I think offensively, yeah. I mean, I think anytime you're able to put up 35 points on a team who has, the defensive firepower that the Eagles have, right? Obviously, you already touched on Fletcher Cox. They have Josh Sweat, Javon Hargrave, C.J. Gardner-Johnson, who they traded for before the season, Darius Slay. They have a very nice secondary going. James Bradbury, who they got from the Giants, Hassan Reddick, they signed to a big deal. Jordan Davis, they drafted. They have a very good defensive roster. So to be able to put up 35 points on them, that I think is definitely a win. But here's the problem with the Lions, and here's why I wouldn't call it necessarily a moral victory. This is the second year in a row we've seen this from the Lions. They did the exact same thing last year against the San Francisco 49ers. They lost 41-33, and we were kind of asking almost the exact same question, right? Like, are they...
Well, that was a little bit different, though, because the 49ers seemingly took the foot. Like, that was a blowout, and the 49ers kind of took the foot. This one was close from start to finish, and they were able to like kind of hold their own and trade blows.
I mean, on some level, yeah. I mean, sure. I think you take a look and at the end of the, I believe it was at the end of the third quarter, we're looking at a 38-21 ball game. So I think you could make the argument that the Eagles took their foot off the gas as well.
Sure.
But here's the problem. The Lions have two fundamental problems. One, their roster has talent, but it's lacking at the most important position. Jared Goff stinks. He does. Like, I'm sorry, and I hate to just continue to bash on Jared Goff anytime I talk about the Lions, but he stinks. The other problem is that their defense is picking up right where they left off. Back in 2021, last year, they gave up 27.5 points per game, which was 31st in football. The only team that was worse than them was the Jets, who gave up 29.6 points per game. So they were a while off of everybody else. They also gave up almost 380 yards per game, which was 29th in football. And that includes 135 rush yards per game. They also were giving up 5.9 yards per play last year, which was second to last. So they're bottom four in all of those categories. Then you go to what happened on Sunday. They gave up 38 points, which is 31st. The only team who gave up more was Arizona, who was playing Kansas City, who we'll touch on in a little bit. They gave up 455 yards. They gave up almost 80 more yards than their average last year. That was 30th in the league. And then they gave up 216 rush yards yesterday. Yikes. And then here's the biggest one. They were giving up 6.3 yards per play. I think yards per play is the single most telling stat in all of football outside of probably the turnover battle. You can generally tell who won and lost the game. If you're not looking at the turnover battle, if that's the same, look at yards per game, and you'll probably get your winner. They have not improved in any of those categories. Again, they've loaded up with young talent, right? You just go down that entire depth chart. You talk about Aiden Hutchinson. You talk about the receiver Jameson Williams that they just drafted from Alabama. You could talk about Amon-Ra St. Brown, right, who popped off as a rookie last year. You could talk about Jeff Okudah, who was their first-round pick from a couple of years ago. That's fine. But if you can't stop anybody on defense, and if you have Jared Goff at quarterback, you're going nowhere fast. You're going nowhere extremely fast. And maybe this is a blessing in disguise for him, right? I don't know how much of a leash Dan Campbell's going to get. He got a 5-year contract, I believe, right out of the gate, which is extremely...
He's going to coach through all 5. You have to coach through all 5. This is... The Detroit Lions are ungodly impatient. Like that's always been the problem with the Detroit. Like Detroit Lions hire a new coach and they want like, here, let's do it, and like they forget just how terribly constructed the team is. So I think Dan Campbell coaches out through all 5, no matter what happens. He's got the heart of the city. He's got the heart of the players. I agree with you. This isn't a moral victory. I do think though that this is a good sign, because this is a good football team with a good defense, and they scored 35 points. We're talking about a team that's going to face the Washington Commanders next week, and I think that's a win for them. I definitely think, are they going to Washington, or is Washington? Either way, they play the Washington Commanders next week, the commies, and I think they're going to win that game. They have 2 games against the Bears, right? They've got a game on the schedule somewhere. I believe they play the Seahawks. I think they have a lot of games against teams that are right in their bracket of either being average or below average. All of them are winnable games. I think this isn't a moral victory because I don't believe in moral victories. I don't even know why I asked the question. I don't believe in moral victories, but I do think, though, that the Lions can walk away from this as best as possible, because it is a loss, right, with their heads held high. I agree with you. Jared Goff is terrible. He's a terrible quarterback. He is terrible at his job. He's a bum. I 100% agree with you. But I also recognize that no good quarterback is going to want to play for Detroit unless they're drafted to Detroit, and then they'll have to play for Detroit because they have to play for Detroit. But by and large, I do think that this is good. 216 rushing yards is obviously concerning, but then I think you have to remember that this is a team in the Philadelphia Eagles whose identity is to run the football. That's all they want to do is run the football, which is kind of ironic considering that they brought in AJ Brown to be that secondary receiver or maybe that primary receiver alongside Devontae Smith. So there's a little bit of irony there. But I mean, you're talking about Philly. Jalen Hurts had a rushing touchdown. Kenneth Gainwell had a rushing touchdown. Miles Sanders had a rushing touchdown. Boston Scott had a rushing touchdown. What are you going to do? This is the best team running the football in the second half of last season, entering the playoffs last season. This is kind of what you expect. I think, though, that the Lions are okay. It's a bad football team, but I think they're okay. I still think the Lions can win 7 games this year. I had them losing this game anyway, so this wasn't really shocked. I was just taken aback a bit by, number one, how many points they were able to score on what I think could potentially be one of the league's best defenses this season, but also the fact that, and I get it, right? It was 38-21 going into the fourth quarter, but I think the argument can still be made up until the Eagles had scored on back-to-back possessions. The Lions were holding their own and kind of trading blows to the Eagles a bit, and they did crawl back in there in the fourth quarter, having scored 14 points with a chance to potentially win the game if they would have made that one stop on third down against the Eagles. Who knows what happens there? That was just one of a lot of crazy games across the league in week one. Now we're going to go to a game that was also crazy, but for different reasons. The Minnesota Vikings hosted our Green Bay Packers, and Justin Jefferson looked like he was doing warm-up routes. I mean, just absolutely scorched Green Bay's defense. Aaron Rodgers threw a pick, didn't throw for a touchdown. The offense looked all out of whack. Granted, there was no D-Block, there was no Elgton Jenkins. The defense looked even more out of whack. What's more concerning as a Packers fan? The offense not clicking or Justin Jefferson torching the defense?
I do want here. I'm gonna talk a little bit about Justin Jefferson before, because I was kind of one of those guys who, and maybe this is my Packer bias shining through. I definitely felt before the season, regardless of what happened in week one, I think the thought in my head is Davante Adams is going to come out of this season still as the best wide receiver in football because Davante is going to get his. I think Justin Jefferson in week one passed Cooper Kupp and passed Davante Adams and is now the best wide receiver in football. Here's why. We're now seeing Justin Jefferson. He's been in this system for one game. This Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan system, whatever you want to call it. Cooper Kupp's been in that same system for 72 games, and Davante Adams in Green Bay was in it for 42 games. When you look at the numbers, Justin Jefferson has been absolutely fantastic. Justin Jefferson has a higher career yards per catch he has a higher career yards per catch, but he also has a better yards per catch in any season, in every season he's ever played in the NFL than Kupp or Adams have in any season. He's averaging at least 15 yards per reception in every season he's been in the NFL, and the highest, I believe, out of Cooper Kupp and Davante Adams, I think, is one of them had a 12.9 yards per reception, and that was a couple years ago. You look and just the average of yards per game. In this new system, he's played one game. He has the route running of Davante Adams. He has similar hands to, pretty much anybody. And after the catch, he's just as good, if not better than Jamar Chase. I think personally, he's the best wide receiver in football. Now, what was really scary to me, and I think that I'm kind of not answering your question, but at the same time, I am. I'm not super concerned about the offense. Last year we lost by more. We scored less points and we gave up more. I'm not super worried. What I am worried about is this coaching staff and their lack of ability to adjust, because we see it time and time and time again. Literally last year in Minnesota, we gave up 160 something yards and I think 2 touchdowns to Justin Jefferson on 8 catches. Jair Alexander was not playing, and that was my excuse the entire time. He's going up against Eric Stokes, who had been getting cooked all year, although I think Eric Stokes is a good NFL cornerback. And then what they did is they went out and they tried the exact same thing again. But you had Jair Alexander. And this is, again, they chose the entire time, all 9 catches of Justin Jefferson, all of his yards and all of his touchdowns were on the 2 Packers safeties. Adrian Amos had a career bad game. He had a really bad one. And don't even get me started on Darnell Savage. They were ridiculously horrible. But both of the touchdowns were given up on Adrian Amos. This is what scares me about the coaching staff and their lack of ability to adjust. This is why you paid Jair Alexander. This is why you paid Rasul Douglas. This is why you went out and you drafted Eric Stokes, to have the versatility, to be able to, because, Jair talked about it after the game, basically saying that in practice he was asking, hey, can I travel with him? Can I travel with him? Can I travel with him? And here's the thing. Maybe Jair gets torched the exact same way, but I'd like to see the effort. I trust Jair Alexander. I trust Jair Alexander 10 times more.
Justin Jefferson is great. There's no way Justin Jefferson lined up against Jair Alexander, Packer bias or not. There's no way Jair Alexander gets torched to the tune of 8 catches, 166 yards.
But let's just pretend he did. I like that outcome way more than I like the outcome of Darnell Savage and Adrian Amos covering him. Sure. I like that outcome way more. You pay all these guys so that you can have the versatility. I genuinely think that the Packers could go play man defense against pretty much anybody in the league, and I think you're fine if you're coming out in nickel. If you have your 3 cornerbacks, your 2 safeties out on the field, and you can honestly flip-flop back and forth between Quay Walker and Devondre Campbell, and I think that's a top 1 defensive unit in the NFC. See, I that's why you go out and pay those guys, so that you can have the versatility to, in the middle of the game, if something's not working, screw it. We're going to change up the scheme, and we're going to take him out. And you saw that what they did in the second half, he only had 1 catch, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe 2 catches.
Here's my beef with the Packers. First of all, offense, not concerned. Okay, we didn't have our top 4 receivers, and the guy that's supposed to be the number 1 receiver didn't play this game. Granted, what I will say is this: Christian Watson dropping what would have been a 75-yard touchdown to open up the game is inexcusable all the time, every day of the week, especially twice on Sunday. Inexcusable.
And I do want to touch just on that offensive line. Not starting Bakhtiari, who, when healthy, was the best left tackle in football. Elton Jenkins, who's the best utility man in all of football, especially along the offensive line. He's the future left tackle of the Packers if Bakhtiari can't get it up or if he's just done.
Yeah,
but the lack.
I don't think D-Bach is done. I think we're being cautious, and I appreciate the caution.
Yeah, and I think especially, and this kind of goes into the lack of ability to adjust too, the fact that Jake Hansen was out there getting bullied for as long as he was before they put in Zach Tom at right guard. The fact that it took them that long to realize that he's not an NFL player and he shouldn't be going up against Zadarius Smith and Danielle Hunter. The fact it took them that long, paired with the rest of the lack of adjustments, that's what scares me about this team. Because Marcus, I don't know if you watched the Boelt last week, but I picked or my show earlier last week.
Kidding. I did.
and I picked, and my NFC Super Bowl pick, or my NFC champion, is the Packers. I picked the Packers to win the NFC because of what you talked about with the Rams and their bad offensive line, along with the Buccaneers, because I think the Packers have the best defensive unit. Offensively, sure. I can't cut.
I don't know. Listen. This defense gave me a heart attack. Why is Quay Walker on Justin Jefferson?
No, it wasn't. No. It wasn't Quay Walker. It was Preston Smith. It was Preston Smith.
That's even worse. Here's the deal, right? From a totality standpoint, the Packers have a lot of talent on defense, right? Yeah. I think the Packers have a top 5 defense in the league. I was not worried about offense, okay? Damn the offense. The offense is going to come eventually. Aaron Rodgers is the quarterback. We're going to have offense. A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones are the running backs. We're going to have offense. That's how I felt 3 months ago when the schedule released and I made the pick for the game. Damn the offense this week, because they're not going to do much. Maybe we could, but probably not, right? When you couple that then coming into the week with Allen Lazard being out because of the ankle injury, D-Bach not being cleared to play, and Elgin Jenkins getting hurt during practice against the week, 100% damn the offense, because we don't have an offensive line. So No need to slander AJ Dillon. No need to slander, although AJ Dillon did score a touchdown. Shout out to him, by the way. Like, there's no need to get mad at AJ Dillon or Aaron Jones or Aaron Rodgers or any of those guys, because Aaron Rodgers and all they did what they could offensively. This defense is supposed to be one of the most talented defenses in football, and we let Justin Jefferson go off to the tune of 8 catches, 166 yards, and 2 touchdowns. That is a touchdown every 4 catches and 20 yards a reception, almost 21 yards a reception. That's inexcusable, because here's the thing. Guess what? Not only do we have another game against Justin Jefferson, we have to face Mike Thomas or Mike Evans later this year. We have to face Cooper Kupp later this year. If this defense can't get it together against Justin Jefferson, who I don't know if he's going to be, I don't know if he's the best wide receiver in football right now. I do still think that belongs to Devontae Adams. I do think he can be when the season is over. And I do think there's 2 people he needs to jump, not just one. But, and it's not Cooper Kupp, but this defense looked god-awful. This defense looked absolutely terrible. The linebacking core looked disgusting. The D-line couldn't get anything going against what is a rather mediocre Minnesota Vikings offensive line. And the secondary, like I said, absolutely torched. Cooked food exhibit. They got put on a billboard. Just blasted, plowed, blown off the map, whatever. It's unacceptable defensively. The offense is going to come. Because here's the thing. Will we be as prolific? Probably not. But in no world are you going to tell me that an Aaron Rodgers-led offense can't produce points, can't score touchdowns, whether it's through the air or on the ground. So let's talk about it. Air or ground, right? Last year we had one of the best passing attacks in football. This year it's looking like we're going to have, hopefully, if everything is healthy, one of the best rushing attacks in football with Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon as everyone gets healthy and all that stuff. Which would you prefer as a fan? Would you rather see the Packers, in hindsight's 2020, and I'm sure I already know where you're going with this, but let's just talk about it. Would you have rather the Packers done everything they could to keep Devontae Adams and we continue to be a pass-first football team, or would you have rather live in the world we live now where Devontae's gone and now we're a run-first football team?
Listen, I think, and here's the problem, right? I think that the nice thing about having Devontae Adams is when we had this game in week 1 last year, outside of the people who are clearly overreacting, everyone was like, this offense will be fine. And again, I still think this offense will be fine, and you still think this offense will be fine.
Of course.
But there is a lot of unknown in that wide receiving room. And I think that there's a lot of unknown, and what is known isn't good. What I think, because here's what we know. We know Randall Cobb is old. That's a fact. We know Amari Rodgers stinks. He stinks. With what I saw, with the quote that we got from Aaron Rodgers today about him, he stinks. They asked, I don't know if you saw that quote, but they asked Aaron Rodgers, like, hey, like what's up with Amari Rodgers' role in the offense? And he said, yeah, he's returning kicks for us now. That's all I got to say. That's not good. Devontae Adams was horrible his first 2 years. We never saw him returning kicks. Amari Rodgers.
These are facts. You're right. These are facts.
Again, Randall Cobb is old, effective sometimes, but old. Amari Rodgers stinks. Robert Tonyan, I think that's part of the unknown. How is he going to bounce back off that ACL? I think obviously he's one of those guys that Rodgers trusts, but we don't know about these rookie receivers. The thing we do know about Christian Watson is that his exact same problem in college is his problem in the NFL, at least through one game. Again, through 3 targets in one game. He can't catch. He had a 10% drop percentage in college. And was that due partly to a very low sample size? Yeah, but there's a difference between not catching the ball and dropping the ball. He dropped the ball, right? Like if he had gotten, if that had hit him in the hands and we saw Harrison Smith, clothesline him,
that's different.
We get
that's
it.
Different.
He had a walk-in 70 feet,
and he had a walk-in. Absolutely,
he had a walk-in touchdown. But to answer your question, I think I like what the Packers can be on offense. I think we do. I think I do. The difference is, and I would like this team a lot more, honestly, and this is a little bit of revisionist history, because in the moment I did not like it. And now seeing what our wide receiving core is, I think I like it. I would like it a little bit more. I wish we would have just doled out the $11 million per year for MVS. I wish we would have had. I wish we would have had some, because we're sitting on $16 million in cap space, and I think the Packers honestly are a little bit overcorrecting because they would have traded for Stephon Gilmore last year had we had the cap space, and I think we probably would have doled out more money for Odell Beckham Jr. than veterans minimum, and we probably could have got him last year. So I think they're overcorrecting a little bit, and they didn't want to spend all that money on MVS because he is kind of a receiver who, again, doesn't have trustworthy hands, but I think Rodgers trusts him enough. The running attack, if everyone's healthy, can be really good. I think that especially, you're bringing a guy in Christian Watson with Allen Lazard, Allen Lazard is, I think he's the best run blocking wide receiver in football. Christian Watson is he's a good run blocker, and if you don't think he's good, he's at least willing. He played in a run system in college. The nasty offense that they're going to have with the play action, any sort of rollout, any sort of someone slipping out, I think is going to be pretty good. The problem is the unknown. And you knew what you had with Davante Adams. I would rather have the running attack that we have right now with that unknown than knowing that our ceiling for a fact was the NFC Championship game, because outside of Davante Adams, we truly had nobody else. Because I think if we don't have Davante Adams, or if we don't trade away Davante Adams, obviously we don't have Davante or Quay Walker. Or maybe we do, but we don't have Devontae Wyatt. And I don't think we have Christian Watson either. And I think that Christian Watson, although he had a very horrible week 1 on that catch, you can't start a career off much worse than that other than like a fumble. But it's going to be a process with him. And we're playing the Bears at home this week. I'm hoping that it's going to be a classic Aaron Rodgers versus the Bears slaughter fest. And, maybe Watson gets a touchdown. Maybe Dobbs gets a touchdown. And then we're not having this conversation next week, right? But for right now, I would take the running attack, because I think that if they would have leaned on the running attack in that game a little bit more, right, we were getting about 6 a clip, 6.2. Aaron Jones had 5 rushes for 49 yards, which is 9.8 a clip. I think we would have been in that game for a lot longer. That doesn't mean I think we would have won. But I think that we would have been in the game for a lot longer, which is why I'm choosing the rushing attack.
Call me crazy. I absolutely agree, because here's the thing, right? We watched Niners go to 2. We watched Niners go to 2 NFC Championship games in the Super Bowl doing what? Running the ball. We watched Tampa Bay Buccaneers go to a Super Bowl doing what? Running the ball. I watched last year, or a couple years ago, the year before that. Who's in the NFC Championship game the year before?
49ers.
No.
In 2018, Rams.
Yeah.
It was 20, or it was the Eagles. No, it was the Eagles who were playing in a run based system with Jay Ajayi. Jay Ajayi wasn't my. Yeah.
So, how many pass first offenses in the last 10 years have made it to a Super Bowl out of the NFC, other than the Los Angeles Rams last year, which isn't technically a pass first offense, but was pass first because Cam Akers got hurt for a bunch of the season and then came back. Yeah. None, I think. The 49ers back in 2012 were a pass-first football team. The
49ers in 2012. In 2013, it was the Seahawks. In 2014, it was the Seahawks.
Run-first offense. In
2015 was the Panthers, and they were a run-first offense.
Run-first offense. In 2016, it was...
That was the last one. It was a pass-first.
It was the Falcons. So they were pass-first. In 2017, let's see, we watched the Eagles go to the Super Bowl run-first. In 2018... Was that 2017? Yeah. No. Yep. 2018.
2017 was the Rams again. With Jared Goff.
So Rams, Eagles. Point is, one team in the last 10 years has made it to the Super Bowl passing the ball first. You know the team before that made it to the Super Bowl last, passing the ball first? It's the Green Bay Packers. It's 11 years ago. 11 years ago was the last time the Green Bay Packers were able to rake it to and eventually win a Super Bowl pass first. It don't work. It just doesn't work. Look, I get on this show all the time and I clown Cowboy fans and sometimes I clown Laker fans and I clown all these other fans about the definition of insanity. Here's the deal. What is insanity for those of you guys that are just joining and don't know what insanity is? Insanity is expecting the same again, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Well, in 2019, we were pass first offense, got blown off the field in the NFC Championship. In 2020, we were pass first offense and lost in the NFC Championship game. In 2021, we were pass first offense and we lost in the divisional round. Every year before that we've made the playoffs and we've been healthy, we were a pass-first offense that didn't make it back to the Super Bowl. So, running the ball first seems to be the thing that works. This is an offensive line that when he gets back will have the best left tackle in football, which by default would make him the best offensive lineman in football because left tackle is the hardest position to play on an offensive line. Well,
the only one possible is Trent Williams. That's the only person who's possibly better.
Williams, and I'll say he's the second best offensive lineman overall. The point is, running the ball first wins you NFC Championship games. Running the ball first gets you into the Super Bowl. I'll take it a step further. Of all the teams that won a Super Bowl in the last 10 years, a large chunk of them were run-first offenses, with an exception of the Chiefs a couple years ago and the Rams this past season, right? Every Patriots team was actually defense first, but I guess run second, so that kind of counts as far as being run first compared to the past. And the Baltimore Ravens in 2012 were a run-first offense, but then Joe Flacco was also like kind of crazy and doing a lot of crazy things, so they kind of passed the ball as well. When Peyton Manning and the Broncos won the Super Bowl in 2015 when they played the Panthers, they were run first offense. Like, this is what happens. Running the ball wins you championships. That's how it works. Damn offense win games, defense win championship. No. Running the ball wins you championships. The Green Bay Packers want to win a championship. Would I like to have Devontae Adams on this roster and run the ball first? Absolutely would. I'm not crazy. But if I'm picking a pass-first offense with Devontae Adams, where we know that the cap is an NFC Championship game, or a run-first offense that in the last 10 years has saw multiple different teams across the NFL find success, make deep playoff runs, make it to and win a Super Bowl in some cases, that's what I want. I want the Packers to run the ball first. Here's the deal. This is going to be the worst game of the Packers season. How do I know that? Because week 1 last season was the worst game of the Packers season. Got blasted 31-3. What we do? We only went on to win 13 games after that. Had the first seed in the NFC, and then the rest is kind of. But in the last 4 years, since Matt LaFleur has been a head coach, or in the last 3 years, I think it is, the Packers are 2-2 in week 1. The rest of the way, we're 37-9. So what that tells me is that week 1, as it's always been, is an anomaly and doesn't mean anything, and we should take it with a grain of salt. The defense looked terrible. That is pause for concern, but the offensive line wasn't healthy. Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon, despite being productive behind a bad offensive line, look, a bad offensive line is a bad offensive line. There's not much you can do about that. And Aaron Rodgers threw a pick. Whatever. Aaron Rodgers throws a pick. Like, it's not the end of the world. He's not going to throw that many more of them because he doesn't do that. So you'll see 6 more of them this season, and you'll see 20-ish or more touchdowns this season, and everything will be all gravy, and the Packers will win a football game and then lose in the playoffs, and we'll be all depressed and stuff for the offseason. So let's go comparative and let's forecast, right? Our Aaron Rodgers struggled without Devontae Adams. It seemed as if Patrick Mahomes thrived without Tyreek Hill. He had 5 touchdown passes through 3 quarters against the Arizona Cardinals in what was a dominant performance by the Chiefs on the road in Arizona. I think he finished with 360 total yards passing and 5 touchdowns. Which quarterback do you think can keep up the trend that they've set from week 1 more? Are we more likely to see more bad games from Aaron Rodgers like we saw in week 1? Or do you think we're more likely to see more extremely efficient, all-time great performances from Patrick Mahomes leading into the rest of the season? Which quarterback do you think stays true to what we saw in week 1?
I'm gonna trust Patrick Mahomes on that one, and part of that I think is due to the fact that I think the Packers offense is going to get better. The Chiefs offense, if you really look at it, when you compare them to the Packers currently right now, I think they have probably 3 better pass catchers than the Packers do, not counting running backs. I mean, obviously Travis Kelce is probably the 2nd or 3rd best weapon in all of football, and then you have 3 legit burners who just took the place of Tyreek Hill, right? Mecole Hardman, Sky Moore, and MVS that we were just talking about. They have legit speed. And I didn't even talk about Juju Smith-Schuster, who's a solid number 2. You're going to see a lot more of that from Patrick Mahomes, especially if
I don't know if I love the Juju Smith-Schuster love there, but
especially if their offensive line looks as good as they did, right? Mahomes was sacked 0 times. Rodgers, on the other hand, I don't think it's going to be this bad, but he was sacked 4 times, and there was a lot more pressures. And while I think at least 2 of those sacks, as well as some of the pressures were on Aaron Rodgers, I think Mahomes being a lot more mobile allows him to duck and dodge that a little bit more, and I think he's a lot less stubborn than Rodgers is about changing plays due to pressure. I think I saw there was some sort of interview, I can't remember who did it, But they were talking about, the difference between Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers when it comes to, pre-snap. Tom Brady will see the defense and Aaron Rodgers will see the defense the exact same way. They will both know exactly the coverage that's happening. The difference is Tom Brady is like, all right, I'm going to change the play to beat this coverage. And Aaron Rodgers is like, watch this. I'm going to beat this coverage and I don't have to change jack. So I think Mahomes almost leans a little bit more now. He kind of plays a little bit in the middle, right? I think he can go and change the play. But I think he also has that Rodgers-like athleticism where it's just he can make any throw from any sort of angle. He has decent weapons. Everybody was crapping on the Chiefs the second they traded away Tyreek Hill. Like, what's going to happen with the offense? Nothing. You have the best quarterback in football. I love Aaron Rodgers.
Second best quarterback in football.
I love Josh Allen.
Yeah, absolutely. That's
worst case scenario. You have the second best quarterback in all of football. You still have Travis Kelce. You still have Mecole Hardman. You drafted Sky Moore. You signed Devontae Adams. They're going to be fine on offense. We're going to see a lot more of this from the Chiefs. Truly, I mean, I think you look and we're going to talk about a little bit. That game coming up against the Chargers that they have on Thursday Night Football. Patrick Mahomes has been extremely good against his division. He only has 3 division losses in his he's going into his 5th year of actually playing football, or his 4th year of playing football. And he only has 3 losses. He's lost to the Raiders once, and then he smoked them later that season, and he's lost to the Chargers twice. He's going to torch his division just like he always has. We're going to see a lot more of this from Patrick Mahomes, a lot more.
I don't know if we're going to see another 3-16-5 because I don't trust the Arizona Cardinals defense or anything about the Arizona Cardinals. But I have to agree with you just because I know that we won't see any more bad games from Aaron Rodgers. So this segment kind of sucks.
We might see more bad games from Aaron Rodgers. We won't see any that bad. We are not going to see very many.
Maybe. I don't know.
We'll see him throw up. We'll see him put up a stinker against like the Dolphins when it doesn't matter.
Damn Dolphins. Look, this is a terrible segment in hindsight. Before we get into overreactions, because this is Overreaction Wednesday, and before we talk about Thursday Night Football, let's talk about Monday Night Football. The Denver Broncos. I don't really know what words really to describe just how terrible the Denver Broncos were in the last minute of football on Monday night. Russ's return to Seattle. There we go. Okay. Russ's return to Seattle was spoiled with a 17-16 loss to his former team, the Seattle Seahawks. Who's to blame for the loss? Is it Russell Wilson or is it Nathaniel Hackett?
It's Nathaniel Hackett, and it's not particularly close. I think like this show was definitely could be some disagreements. I don't think we're going to have one so far. Maybe we do on the last one, but I got to be honest. I think I'm reading your mind on this one. Nathaniel Hackett, and this is the reason that I didn't hate that the Packers lost him. Everyone's like, here goes the Packers offense. They're losing offensive coordinator Nathaniel Hackett. He doesn't call plays. He designs red zone schemes for the Packers, or he did. And guess what the Broncos offense sucked at? Red zone offense. It's not shocking. It really isn't. They looked. I'm sure did you watch the entirety of this game?
Yeah.
Did that offense in the red zone not look exactly like what the Packers offense in the red zone has looked like for the past however many years? Shotgun runs on the goal line, just roll out plays that all they do is result in what's basically a throwaway. It looked absolutely horrible. We saw more clock management. And again, most of this is on Aaron Rodgers when you talk about the poor clock management. Because I mean, we kind of Packers fans, we have this kind of inside joke of just like you can basically count on 2 out of our 6 timeouts a game being burned because Rodgers let the play clock get too low. We saw that the entire game. Russell Wilson was able to get the snap off, but they were constantly snapping the ball with 2, 3, 1, 0 seconds left on the play clock. And then you talk about the field goal choice, man. Why are you paying a quarterback $240 million to let a kicker who is 1 for 7 at that moment on field goals of 60-plus yards? And here's what I will say. Here's where I'll defend Brandon McManus, obviously, and maybe even Nathaniel Hackett a shred. I think there's 3 kickers genuinely in the league that can make that kick. 4.
I agree with you.
I'll give you 4. Justin Tucker, obviously. Matt Prater, Brandon McManus, and probably Harrison Butker. They have the leg for it at least. Brandon McManus has a fantastic leg, and again, it only missed by a couple. We're 3 yards away from talking about what a gutsy call that was. Whatever.
No. No, not me. That's a terrible call either way. Look,
I think it's able to be, if they make it, you can gloss over it. Right?
No,
like
you cannot.
I think if they made it, we gloss over it. Again, I disagree with the decision just as much as you. But I'll make Nathaniel Hackett's case a little bit.
Glossing.
I'll make
gloss belongs on your lips, and that's it. In a glossary, there's no glossing over that. You don't pay Russell Wilson all that money to take him off the field on 4th and 5 and hope to God that Brandon McManus kicks a 64-yard field goal. Look, there are four kickers that are capable of making the kick. Sure, there's one guy in the NFL that is on a roster as a kicker that I would trust on a 4th and 5 in hostile territory in this type of situation to make that field goal. And his name is Justin Tucker. He's the only kicker in football. You want to trot Brandon McManus out there for a 64-yarder in the middle of the second quarter? Be my guest. To clinch the game? No. Make it or miss it. That's a terrible decision. And look, here's the thing. I'll be honest. I don't like always being, that's not true. I love being right, but I don't like telling people I told you so. But damn it, Steezy A. Smith, I told you so. Because all I've been telling you all off season, I wish Steezy was here, is that Nathaniel Hackett does not deserve the credit that he deserves for what Aaron Rodgers has been able to do over the last 2 years. Because as Emmitt said, he only designs red zone offenses, and last season, the red zone offense was disgusting because Rob Tonyan tore his ACL. The season before, it was still bad, but they maxed it because a lot of those passes, those shotgun passes, those pistol looks, those rollouts were going to Rob Tonyan because he's the big body target in the red zone. Here's the deal. There's two major takeaways. Number one, Nathaniel Hackett, not qualified to be a head coach right now. Big shocker. Number two, somebody doesn't trust Russell Wilson. Because here's the thing, right? Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Justin Herbert, Pat Mahomes, Lamar Jackson. Dare I say Dak Prescott? Who else? Josh Allen for sure. Matt Stafford? Absolutely. All of those QBs on a 4th and 5 from there, you're not trying out the kicking unit. You're going for it on 4th and 5. And most importantly, Russ, the clock's winding down. Why are you not calling a timeout, sir? What's happening? So that's bad clock management. I sit on this show all the time and I bash Mike McCarthy for how terrible he is at managing the clock. Guess what? Russell Wilson, that's the worst job you've ever done at managing a clock. I saw the meme and it's hilarious. Peyton Manning made a timeout motion on the side cast for the Mannings 62 times in 20 seconds. The Broncos made one. It's because the play clock was winding down. This is absurd. I don't gloss over things like this because you cannot. Brandon McManus makes the kick. Great for you. You win the game. That doesn't make it a good decision. That doesn't take away from the fact that you don't trust your $200 million quarterback to get you 5 yards. Look, here's the stat. You have a 14% chance of making that kick. I don't care who you are, if you're Brandon McManus. Now, if it's Justin Tucker, I'd say it's a guarantee. But you have a 14% chance of winning the game, you make that kick. If you go for it on 4th and 5 and you make it, you have a 66% chance of winning the game, whether it's by touchdown or by field goal. And if you get those 5 yards, that 64-yard field goal turns into something in the mid-50s, which we all know that every NFL kicker can absolutely nail a game-winning field goal that is roughly around 54 yards or less, because we see it all the time. Nathaniel Hackett made a terrible decision. And because of this, I am going to double down right here, right now, on my belief that the Denver Broncos are going to miss the playoffs and they're going to be dead last in the division, because this is a close game that shouldn't have been a close game. Number one, against the Seahawks. You think the Chargers? You think you're not going to blow out the Chargers? You're not going to blow out the Chiefs? You're not going to blow out the Raiders? You're going to be in more close games. And if you struggle to make this decision now in week 1, you can't tell me that we're not going to see this mistake rear its ugly head later in the season when games start to matter more, specifically when it's in division and against other conference opponents. This stuff matters. Nathaniel Hackett made a bad decision. And look, shout out to Russ, who was in his Emmy tux, like he was at the Emmys or whatever, for supporting his head coach, and Nathaniel Hackett for doubling down on it. But number one, somebody doesn't trust Russ. Number two, Nathaniel Hackett's not qualified for the job. He's not ready. Those aren't harsh facts. That's the harsh reality of the situation. Because any other QB, Josh Allen, Aaron Rodgers, Pat Mahomes, Tom Brady, Matt Stafford, even Dak Prescott, Lamar Jackson, any of those guys, they're going for the fourth down. I've seen John Harbaugh on a 4th and 2 on the 50-yard line look at Lamar Jackson and say, hey, Lamar, you want to go for it? And what does Lamar say? Absolutely. They go for it, right? Aaron Rodgers all the time. Tom Brady makes those decisions. Somebody doesn't trust Russell Wilson, and or Russell Wilson might not trust Nathaniel Hackett. See, originally I thought that maybe the issue would be that Russ holds on to the ball too much, and that could be the undoing. But no. We have to recognize that this is still a first-year head coach, and I've been screaming from the mountaintops that I don't care how great Aaron Rodgers looked. It wasn't Nathaniel Hackett that was making him look that good, and he's still a first-year head coach. Josh McDaniels worked all of his career, his entire coaching career in New England with Bill Belichick and Tom Brady, the greatest coach and the greatest quarterback of all time. Josh McDaniels right now is on his second stint as a head coach. The first time it was terrible, and he just got absolutely plastered by the Los Angeles Chargers in week 1. Thank you for your time. Nathaniel Hackett's not a good head coach. This will be a bad season, and I would bet, I'm not going to, but I would bet every dollar I have that the Denver Broncos are going to miss the playoffs, and it's going to be because of bad coaching decisions by Nathaniel Hackett.
And I'm gonna take it a step further. That was a fireable game from Nathaniel Hackett. I'm gonna take it that step further, because when you really look at it, he was brought in. Let's be completely real about this. He was brought in to bring Aaron Rodgers to Denver. Make no mistake about it. That's why he was hired as the head coach of Denver, not because he's some offensive mastermind. Because let's take a look at the offenses that he's really put together. He put together the 2017 Jags offense, or 2018. Thank you. He put together, and again, he's a red zone guy, right? Then why the Packers failed in the NFC Championship game against the Buccaneers? Oh, wait, that was in the red zone. Then you look at this past season, the Packers were one of the worst red zone teams in the league when it comes to contenders. And then you look at yesterday. Here's just some of the mind-blowing stats. They ran 15 more plays. They had 12 penalties for over 100 yards, and they were 0 for 4 in the red zone. What are you doing? Why are you on the team? You got hired, quote unquote, if the Broncos management was telling you, he got hired because he was an up-and-coming, fantastic offensive coordinator. The only times we've seen him ever call plays was in the red zone in 2020 for the Packers when they wound up choking in the NFC Championship. He was calling plays in 2021 when the Packers had one of the worst offenses in the red zone out of the contenders. He was calling plays in Jacksonville in 2018 when their offense stunk, and the only reason they got to the NFC or the AFC Championship is because their defense was so damn good. He is not qualified to be a head coach. If I would have known you had done that, I would have doubled down on that too. He was horrible. And again, I know everyone's going to kind of be like, oh, well, fire someone after one game. He was that bad. He has Mike McCarthy qualities.
Look, the Nebraska's head coach, Scott Frost, got fired after 3 games, whatever it was. Like, it's not unheard of.
No.
I personally wouldn't fire him, but that is something you look at and you say, wow.
But I think, here's the difference.
Struggled in the most important. Why is Nathaniel Hackett not calling a timeout at that time? You're taking way too long. What are we doing?
And especially when you talk about the timeout, here's the thing. Nathaniel Hackett, here's the thing. I get firing him after one game obviously isn't super practical, but you and I wouldn't have hired him, right? I mean, so like at least we have that going for us. Here's the thing. The clock management, and here's where I put a little bit of blame on Russ. One, he wasn't trusting the system. They were running the same Sean McVay, Matt LaFleur, Kyle Shanahan system. They were running that same system, and that it takes a little bit to get used to. It does. Russell Wilson was taking his checkdowns more than I've ever seen in my entire career. All of my Seahawk friends were talking about, wow, I've never seen Russ hit the running backs and tight ends as much. Javonte Williams was second in the league in receptions to only Cooper Kupp. And here's where I understand almost the decision to kick it a little bit. Not obviously, I'm not saying let's go for it. Here's where I understand it a little bit. Russ was not throwing the ball downfield well, and you had to pick up those 5 yards. Hell, on the 3rd and 15 that puts you in position to be in the 4th and 5, Russ threw it 5 yards behind the line of scrimmage on 3rd and 15, and he got lucky Javonte Williams broke tackles.
But there's options here. Like
no, I understand.
And here's
why I
and try to get him off sides. There's
right.
so many different
and here's where I start putting it on Russ. Here's where
20 seconds at some point, not to cut, like at some point from a Nathaniel Hackett standpoint, right?
Right.
You're watching your quarterback. The entire offense was confused. Nobody knew what was going on. At some point, you have to take control of that situation and say, look, let's just call a timeout here. Let's figure this out. Let's figure this out. You don't trot out Brandon McManus. I don't care that he's capable. Yeah, he's capable of it. But do you trust Brandon McManus at that spot, in that moment of this game, of the magnitude of this game? I get it's week 1. This is Russ's return. Somebody's trying to stick it to somebody. Somebody. At some point, you have to look at this as from a totality and say, look, I'm the head coach. I need to make a decision. The clock's dwindling down, and they're not even at the line yet. Russ is still telling everybody what to do. Something has to give. You wasted 20 seconds of game clock doing that. Like, and I get it. It's your last play of the game potentially, but you're paying Russell Wilson $200 million. You just extended Russell Wilson. This is a game you were not supposed to lose, not because of what it meant, but because you're better than the Seattle Seahawks, and you lost the game because you can't make a decision. You didn't make a decision, Andrew Hackett. Russ didn't make a decision. Nobody made a decision, and we're just like, you know what? Well, we can't go for it now because if we don't like the look, then we got to run it because we already called a timeout. So let's just send the kicker out there and hope for the best. What?
And that's what, and here's where I put a little bit of blame on Russ. If he would have, regardless of if he knew if that was the plan or not, because everyone was saying, oh, that was the plan. No, it wasn't. You stop lying to yourself. If Russell Wilson calls that timeout the second that play's over and you have just over a minute, that handicaps Nathaniel Hackett. And maybe this sounds like it's some, gigantic power struggle, which it's not supposed to be, but it kind of is already. If you call that timeout, you have no choice but to go for it. Because if you take that field goal, and let's say you make it, you're giving Seattle however many timeouts they had and a minute to go down the field. You have to go for it there. If you're Russell Wilson and you call that timeout, you make Nathaniel have to go for it.
Okay, but here's the thing. It's not even that, though. Javonte Williams was tackled inbounds. Yeah?
Yeah.
Clock was still running.
Yeah.
What are we talking about? The clock was still running.
That's what, yeah.
That is timeout call. Like, I get it. Okay, you called the timeout. You got to go for a 4th down. You're paying Russell Wilson $200 million.
Exactly.
That's what he's there for.
Yeah.
I can see if your QB is still Drew Lock or Philip Lindsay for that one game in the COVID year when he was the QB. You're paying Russell Wilson, arguably a top 5 quarterback in the league, definitely top 10. This is why you're paying him. This is the moment as to why you're paying him, and you kick a field goal. Like, make it or not. I get it. Okay, you make it. He's a hero. Brandon McManus is. That's still a bad decision. You're playing with the house's money at that point. If you're gonna, we're living in Seattle. We're playing a game in Seattle, a team that's known in a place that's known for bad weather. And I get it. The weather was fine on Monday, but still, bad weather all around. Anything can happen. You have 3 timeouts. If I'm not mistaken, Emmitt, the Broncos didn't call a single timeout at all. The clock just kept rolling. They had all 3 timeouts. So throughout the course of that last drive, not one time did they stop the clock.
Yeah.
So this isn't even just you don't call a timeout here. It's you're getting stopped in bounds and all this other stuff. You're getting sacked. You're losing yards. And you just, we're just going to let the clock run. Yeah, let's just let the clock run. No, that's not what you do. It's stupid. Stupid. So for all you out there that really thought that Nathaniel Hackett and Russell Wilson were going to be a dynamic duo in the NFL was going to lead the Denver Broncos to the Super Bowl and potentially win it, you're a moron. And in 17 weeks, when the Denver Broncos are sitting at home on their couch with 9 wins, I'm coming back on this show and I'm telling you, I told you so because I told you so. Now, let's get off of this because I'm done with the Broncos. Let's move on to the AFC West showdown. Actually, before we get into that, let's talk about overreactions because it is week 1, and week 1 is usually when we get the most overreactions. What is your biggest overreaction from week 1?
I got a couple. I'm kind of deciding here. I think that here's some of mine. I'll read off. I got four. I wasn't sure how many we were supposed to do. I'll read off four, and then I'm going to kind of decide as I say on my spiciest. I think it's very realistic that the Rams and the Raiders don't make the playoffs. Well, I think it's very possible
the Rams and the Raiders,
the
Raiders will miss the playoffs.
They're individual hot takes.
Sure.
Okay. I think those are possible. I also think it's possible. Then these are going to be two opposite sides of the spectrum. I think it's possible the Bills go 17-0, and I think it's possible the Jets go 0-17. The Jets looked horrible, and my Jets I think is probably my best one. Here's why I think it's possible they go 0-17. One, Zach Wilson's injury obviously screws them because Joe Flacco cannot play quarterback in 2022. His last good season was 10 years ago. Yep. 10 years ago. Yeah, he hasn't been good since. And the problem with that is that, again, until Zach Wilson gets back, and even once Zach Wilson gets back, like, are we sure Zach Wilson's good? Because I'm not. And then you look at that game, and it was so horribly coached. Did you look at the stats of this game, Marcus?
No, I don't watch Jets football. I'm not ashamed to say that.
Oh, guess how many times Joe Flacco threw the ball? To say that. Guess how many times Joe Flacco threw the ball?
Wait, I heard it was like upwards of 50, wasn't it?
59 times.
Yeah, that's a losing recipe for
Joe Flacco threw the ball 59 times in an NFL game in 2022. That's at some point that's horrible coaching.
Well, we get Joe Flacco throwing the ball past 30 times, you have a massive problem.
Exactly. Because their running game wasn't even doing horrible. It wasn't. It was doing way better than the Baltimore team or than the Baltimore Ravens were. Yeah. They were doing way better. 17 carries, 83 yards. That's almost 5 a carry, 4.9. Then you look at Baltimore, 21 rushes, 63 yards, 3 yards per carry. You could have been in this game had you just ran the ball. Why'd you draft Breece Hall then? Why do you have Michael Carter on the roster? If you're going to throw the ball, if you want to run the air raid offense with Joe Flacco, be my guest. But again, thank God I'm not a Jets fan because I would be pissed. I would be pissed if you trotted out Joe Flacco or if Chase Daniel was on my team, and I know this apples to oranges, blah 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 blah. If you
at this point, I'd take Chase Daniel over.
If you had any sort of mediocre, if you had any sort of mediocre, washed up, garbage backup quarterback throwing it 59 times, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah,
what are you doing? It's very possible that the Jets are going to wind up going 0-17. I think when you look at their schedule, they have the worst quarterback, I'm pretty sure, in every single game this year. The only game that's possible is literally just depends on how you feel about Geno Smith / I'm super low on Tua, but I'm not that low on Tua. They have the worst quarterback because, again, look, Cleveland with Jacoby Brissett, I'm taking Brissett. Joe Burrow, obvious. Kenny Pickett or Mitchell Trubisky, I'm taking both. Tua, I'm taking both. Obviously, I'm taking Aaron Rodgers. I'm taking Russ. I'm taking Mac Jones. Mac Jones twice. Taking Josh Allen twice. I'm taking Justin Fields, Kirk Cousins, Jared Goff, Trevor Lawrence. I'm taking all of them. The only one you might have a quarterback advantage in is Seattle, and you'll have Zach Wilson back by that time. But I'm not the Jets. Number one overall draft pick. Watch for sure. Zach Wilson. He's played how many career games, and he's already going to be on the hot seat because of how bad this team is.
It's possible. So I was thinking that one of my hot takes or one of my overreactions wouldn't be shade, but it's okay. Great minds think alike. The Bills are absolutely going 17-0. You can't look that good and not go 17-0. I had the Bills losing 2 games. I had the Bills losing this game against the Rams, and I had them maybe losing a game to the Patriots. Then I watched the Patriots look absolutely dumbfounded against the Miami Dolphins. The Bills are going 17-0. This offense is fantastic. Here's the thing. They're running the football. Devin Singletary was running the football, and Zach Moss was actually involved in the offense. The Bills are going 17-0. That's easy for me. I've got 2 more. I'm going to stay in the AFC for the first one. I get it. They played great, but they still lost. I understand that. Or they still almost lost. They did come off with the win, right? There's a lot of question marks around what's going to happen offensively. I get it. They've got a couple injuries to deal with on both sides of the ball. I get it. not only is Mike Tomlin not going to have his first losing season this season, I think the Pittsburgh Steelers can make the playoffs. I really, really, really believe that the Pittsburgh Steelers, because here's the thing, right? And I get it. People are going to say, oh, well, they did all that stuff defensively and they still kind of found a way to almost lose the game. And of course, TJ Watt's out. I get it. TJ Watt's not out for the season, though. And that's what I think the big thing is. But let's just forget about TJ Watt for a second. I know it's hard to because he's defensive player of the year. Minkah Fitzpatrick is back.
Yeah.
Like, for the first time since he's been in a Pittsburgh Steelers uniform, Minkah Fitzpatrick is back. And that was my big issue last year, was they had Minkah basically being like a fifth linebacker because they couldn't stop the run, they couldn't stop the pass. Minkah Fitzpatrick is back. I know there's questions about Najee Harris because he's got a little foot thing going on, and that would be a massive blow to them if Najee Harris misses a lot of time. And I understand, obviously, what TJ Watt brings to the table. But defensively, this is why you bring in Brian Flores in the offseason, so that he can help bolster that defense. Mike Tomlin is still Mike Tomlin. This is going to be the most strict, structured, disciplined football team in the NFL this season. I think as long as the Steelers stick with Mitchell Trubisky, don't give up on him for Kenny Pickett, they can make it to the playoffs with 9 wins. That's my first overreaction.
I'm gonna back you up on that one, because regardless the quarterback, I have them as my 6th seed in the playoffs.
This is my second one, and I said this on the show last week. And Germ of Stuff About Sports was disappointed in me, and I think Peyton laughed at me. The New Orleans Saints are going to the Super Bowl.
Ooh,
I think the New Orleans Saints are going to the Super Bowl. Now, this is not a pick that I am married to. I'm going to steal Steezy's card here. I'm not married to this pick. This is, as Stephen A would say, this is fluid. But I do think right now that the New Orleans Saints are going to the Super Bowl. I think they're going to represent the NFC in the Super Bowl. And the reason why is, look, I get that Jameis Winston had a really, really, really bad first half. But this is a team defensively that, despite losing C.J. Gardner-Johnson, still has Tyrann Mathieu, still has Cam Jordan, still has Demario Davis, still has Marshawn Lattimore. There's still talent defensively. I think what happened offensively was a combination of two things. Number one, the offensive line just wasn't ready. Number two, and most importantly, I think we have to acknowledge is I think maybe there was a little bit of rust on Jameis Winston, given that he missed a lot of last season, and everybody was back, and it's the first time everybody did back, not to mention you have Olave in there. Now you've got, there's a lot of moving parts of this offense now, and for the first time in a long time, this is an offense that could be very, very elite as far as the passing game is concerned, not just the running game. I like Alvin Kamara and Marvin Ingram and Mark Ingram in the backfield. We've seen that tandem work in the past. I wish they would have given Alvin Kamara the ball more, right? I think there was just a lot of jitters offensively, but I do still think defensively, though, that this is a team that caused a lot of matchup problems for our Packers, for the Bucs who are in their division, caused a lot of problems for the Rams, particularly if they don't get their offensive line together. So I do want to double down on the Saints making it to the Super Bowl. The biggest overreaction I have after week 1, Saquon Barkley and Christian McCaffrey are going to get hurt this season. I can just feel it.
Oh, that's not that's not even an overreaction.
But listen, and maybe you can say it's not an overreaction because it's like the norm at this point. But I don't like what I saw. I get it. Saquon Barkley had 194 yards total. He had 164 yards rushing. He had a touchdown, the game-winning touchdown, by the way, against Tennessee Titans. And of course, he had 30 yards receiving. Christian McCaffrey was being Christian McCaffrey. That's too much too soon. I think that's too much too soon. Now, what I will say to that to make this an overreaction is, if Christian McCaffrey doesn't get hurt, if Saquon Barkley doesn't get hurt, the Panthers or the Giants will be in the playoffs this year. It's a big if. And I bet my money more on the Panthers than the Giants. As crazy as it is, I love what I saw from Baker Mayfield on Sunday. The Panthers lost this game because of a last-second kick from a rookie kicker. That's not a bad way to lose. I mean, look, it started off a little bit rough, and I know he did throw a pick, right? I know he threw a pick, but Baker played good Baker Mayfield football and had the Panthers in a position to potentially win that game. I did have the Panthers winning that game, actually. This is a team, I love what their defense is doing. I think their defense is young. They're healthy. They're back. I love Brian Burns. I love Jason Horn. This is a solid defense. I think Robbie Anderson went deep for 75 yards, the longest touchdown of the week last week. Of course, you have DJ Moore. Obviously, we talk about Christian McCaffrey. I would like to see Matt Rule use Hubbard a bit more to take the load off of Christian McCaffrey, and maybe Christian doesn't get hurt. But if Christian McCaffrey stays healthy and if Saquon Barkley stays healthy, I could see the Giants and or the Panthers in the playoffs this season. The Giants obviously have the benefit of there not being a Dak Prescott and the Cowboys, and of course we know that the Eagles are the Eagles, and you have the Commanders and the Giants, and anything can happen there in the NFC East. But because it is the NFC East, it is possible I could see the Giants in the playoffs. But 100%, though, I'm with you. The Buffalo Bills are going to go 17-0, and I'll take it a step further. The Buffalo Bills are going to be the first team since the 1972 Dolphins to have a perfect season. They're going all the way.
Ooh.
They're going all the way. They're winning all 17. They're going to win their game in the playoffs, all three of them, and they're going to finish off this season at the top of the NFL mountain as Super Bowl champions. Real quick before we go, because we've gone about 10 minutes over, and by the time we're finished with the show, it'll be 15, 20 minutes over. Thursday Night Football kicks off officially on Amazon Prime with the new Prime Football and all that good stuff. The Los Angeles Chargers, coming off a win against the Raiders, take on the Kansas City Chiefs, coming off a win against the Cardinals. I think I know who you have winning, but who do you have winning this Thursday night matchup between the Chargers and the Chiefs?
Yeah, I mean, I think like there's this game could probably go either way. The Chargers, they have the most success against Patrick Mahomes of any like division opponent, and really, I mean, I think any opponent in the NFL, because not a whole lot of people have had success against Patrick Mahomes. He doesn't necessarily look super good. Both of his losses against the Chargers have come at home. If you remember, the first one was his rookie year. It was in December. I remember this one vividly. I was coming out of watching. I don't remember what movie it was. I caught the end of the game on my phone when the Chargers and Phillip Rivers went for two, and got the win there. And I think the other one was last year. And Patrick Mahomes didn't have necessarily his best game. 3 touchdowns, 2 picks. But I'm going to take the Chiefs in this one. Again, this could go honestly either way. But Keenan Allen being out, and especially with Justin Herbert and his seam of like in his. It seems like he doesn't like throwing the ball to Mike Williams. I don't get it. But Keenan Allen not being in hurts for me way more than the Chiefs not having Harrison Butker or Trent McDuffie. I think those kind of even themselves out. And I'm going to take Patrick Mahomes at home to get the first one. Khalil Mack, of course, could be a game wrecker. He was a game wrecker last week for the Raiders. He got 3 sacks of Derek Carr. But I'm gonna take the Chiefs in a pretty close one. I don't know if we're giving score predictions, but I'll give you. I would stay away from the spread on this game for any gamblers, any degenerates. I would take the Kansas City Chiefs winning. I'd say 27-24.
Exact same score, but for the Chargers, this is the beautiful matchup that I love about the Chargers and why I think the Chargers are going to ultimately win the division. Listen, I recognize that the Chargers didn't improve their run defense, but they did improve their pass defense. The Chiefs didn't improve defensively at all. They can't stop the run. They couldn't stop the run last year or the year before that. They can't stop the run now. Austin Eckler's a top 5 back in football. He's going to prove that this week or tomorrow. And Justin Herbert is one of the best quarterbacks in football. He's going to prove that as well. Meanwhile, I do think that the Chargers secondary is going to be able to blanket the field, make things a little bit tough. 27-24, Chargers are going to win. Get the first one over the Chiefs, and that's going to be the one that matters because they'll be 2-0 in the division at this point, obviously, because the Chiefs haven't played a division game yet, except for the one they're going to play tomorrow. But that will matter down the stretch because I do think that if there's one team that can sweep the division this year, it is the Los Angeles Chargers. They're going to keep that hope alive with a win against the Chiefs. What I believe is at home, I think, or maybe it's on the road.
It's at Arrowhead at Kansas City.
Of course it is. So yeah, there we go. Emmitt, before we go, please everybody know where they can find you and all of your content.
Of course, yeah. At Emmitt J. Sevores on Instagram and Twitter. At the Scene Team Pod on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. You can find any of my work covering the Mariners at sotomojo.com as a part of Fansided, and then anything about the Packers. Emmitt Sevores, again, on Dairyland Express, which is another product of Fansided. But again, Emmitt J. Sevores on Instagram and Twitter.
Once you guys follow Emmitt, make sure you guys follow me, but you guys already know where to find me. GTP Mark is on everything: Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and Facebook. Available on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and of course YouTube, which is how you're watching, or maybe you're listening. And I'm sorry for assuming how you're listening to this greatness. That's my fault. So, we'll be right back here tomorrow. The rundown with Peyton Doyle and myself. live 7:30 right before Thursday Night Football. We got a great slate of stuff to talk to you guys about. Last week, if you missed last week's episode, you have a little over like 20 hours to watch it. So watch last week's episode and then watch this week's episode tomorrow, and then turn on the notifications on Peyton's channel so you can watch the episode next week and the week after that, and so forth and so on, because it's great. It is the most action-packed 30-minute sports show on the interwebs. And if you miss out, then you're a moron and you're a square. And it's 2022. Why are you a moron? Why are you being a square? Like, watch the show. It's great. So for my guy Emmitt of the C Team Pod and of the Boelt, this is Marcus of Go Talk Marcus signing off. Thank you guys for watching, and as always, you guys enjoy the rest of your lives.